Hello, everyone, and welcome to our IEEE Young Professionals webinar. I apologize for the delay, but we have fixed everything and we're all set to go. Today's an exciting day because it's the last part of our six-part series with Corey, and I think today is going to probably be one of the more exciting talks he has, in which he talks about power networking in person and online. If this is the first time you've seen this series, Corey Atkinson is a part of Dimensions of Leadership. He's a leadership and performance specialist. So just some housekeeping rules. Welcome to the Young Professionals webinar series. I'm your host, Matthew Carius. I'm the webinar specialist with the MGA Young Professionals. I am not currently the vice chair for the Toronto Young Professionals Affinity Group. I still volunteer with them. However, I'm the vice chair of the Global IEEE Young Professionals board. And good news, we will be continuing our webinar series monthly into 2015. And quickly, just before we get into the webinar, please type any questions you have in the question box below. Upvote your questions, and during a 5-minute Q&A session at the end, I'll read Corey the questions, and we can probably have a nice discussion from there. So new name, new feel. We are no longer graduates of the last decades. We are now rebranded as Young Professionals, as IEEE Gold was not instantly recognizable as a Young Professionals group, which is exactly what we are. The new name makes it easier to find information and benefits relevant to young professionals in the IEEE. We have tremendous success with the networking mixers in Toronto, and actually we're actually getting a global impact in terms of attending major tech conferences such as CES this past January, and then South by Southwest will be having a presence there next month in March in Austin. We're also going to be revamping our Gold Rush blog, so stay tuned on the rebranding for that. Please check out some career-based services. I'm going to talk about this at the end of the seminar webinar. We have two great career-based services, Mentor Center and Resume Lab, and please connect and follow us with us online at these various sources, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube, where all of our videos are posted. So without further ado, Corey Atkinson, it's the sixth part of 6 parts of a leadership excellent series he's been giving us, started last year in 2014. And like I mentioned before, today is the last part, which is power networking in person and online. So Corey, please take it away.
Thank you a lot, Matthew. How are you doing there today, Matthew? You good?
Good, thank you. It's a bit cold in Toronto, but that's fine.
All right, good to hear. Good to hear. Well, welcome everyone to Power Networking, and I'm trying to keep this one a little bit different in terms of what we're used to in terms of going out and shaking hands. I want to make sure that we realize that networking is critical to anyone and everyone's success. So our agenda for the day is going to be very simple. First, we're going to look at the importance of networks, then networking and leadership, and lastly, social media. Just some tips and tricks and cues and clues for you to watch out for. So thank you for joining us, and get ready for a great one. All right. The first thing I want to talk about is that if you don't like change, you're going to like irrelevance even less. And that's why General Eric Shinsky, Chief of Staff, and why I'm saying is that it's even more important to network and build strong networks, not just enough to exchange business cards and ask people to link in with you. You have to be able to really build a relationship because of how busy our world is. So with that in mind, we want to look at the importance of networks. And when I talk about the importance of networks, I'm really talking about this, right? The network is to information and opportunity. And the critical piece here is that it's about exposure to information and opportunity. And if not, even more so, a focus on opportunity, as information is everywhere. So with that in mind, we've got to take a look at our world and realize that there's a lot of different things going on. We've got changing workplaces, leadership, health and wellness. All these things are blurry, yet at the same time are on the back of our mind, or in the top front of our mind. So how do we do this? How do we build this? And one of the aspects I've noticed is that if you realize the secret to leadership is about capacity, then we got to really minimize the gap, right? The extent to which organizations can minimize the gap between their current and future leadership can drive results and develop their business and help them achieve the results they want. So why we say that is that networking is critical to building leaders and building a leading organization. So why is this? Why do we need to network more often? Well, here are the three things that really seem to be pushing the envelope in this day and age. People are looking for talent. People are looking for capable. People looking to develop, and values. And when you think of it from an organizational point of view, is the talent available? Is the capability sufficient? Is the development fragmented or clear? And are the values with our many different age groups in the workplace, are we able to manage these generation differences? So networking and leadership also go hand in hand. Now, why we say this is because you'll notice I've got my visual here of that we've got to rethink leadership, right? Leadership is a much bigger conversation than it's ever been, in that we have to be able to lead, we have to be able to get our tasks done, we have to be able to work with others, and we've got to be able to get the organization. And you'll notice that we have to have influence and strategic thinking from an east to west line with others, but we also need to have organizational design coming from the leader down to the organization, all the different pieces that go with that, from influence to strategic thinking to employee connection to managing change. And if we're not building, as we said here, networks between these, we're going to be in trouble. You see, leader in the task network determines and describes and represents the leader's vision, leader and others, and then the others in organization. So networks plays a big part of how we can build an organization and, of course, our own offerings in the workplace. So between the elements is the key to successful leadership and key really to personal or professional success. So the question now is, well, how do we get there? Where do we start? And the reason I tell you this is because I always like to share this visual with people, right? The importance of connecting within your organization and without your and sort of outside your organization impacts 6 key areas. And you'll notice that organizations that not only do it inside, but also foster it on the outside and give people opportunities to showcase their skills and be industry leaders, find that financial performance increases, productivity increases, quality of products and service increases, satisfaction for the customer goes up, employee satisfaction goes up by 15 points, and even retention of quality employees. So why we say this is that to develop a great organization, power networking and networking with purpose is critical. And you'll even find that there are some areas that if you make sure that you do the proper networking, you'll get a real payback in. Financial performance, more that people know with one another within the organization can help with performance. Customers are more satisfied, employees stick around. So what does that mean for all of us? Well, that means that we now have to be able to understand that networking and leadership are a really important conversation, more than ever so, because organizations are trying to be so transparent. We'll talk about LinkedIn and social media in a moment, but you know, oftentimes with different websites and so forth, people can get an idea of what the leader or the people within the organization are all about. So that means that we have to make sure that we build trust. And by building trust, that means that you have to network with intention. It's not enough just to say, hi, Matthew, nice to meet you, or hey, Corey, how's it going? Love to connect with you further, or ask a pointed question and really find a way to connect with people and make it be a part of your everyday. Now, the hard part is that we're busy, but if you don't network, sometimes it can impact how fast you get work done. So here are some numbers about trust and why it's so important to make sure that you network within and outside of your organization. 70% of employees believe that trust and loyalty within organizations is declining as of 2012. 60% do not believe their management is even upright or ethical. 50% believe that the lack of trust is a problem, and 70% won't even speak up because they fear repercussions. So if you're not building networks within your organization, not just within your team, but within other groups and other departments, you can see the ramifications if you're somebody who's going to step up and take the lead or run a project. In the book by Gary Hamel, What Matters Now, even Gary said that one of the key things to really change is being able to redraw industry bound lines. And what he means by that is, how do we connect? But the problem with connecting is that teams and organizations seem to be managing or running at a bit of a dysfunctional point of view. Now, don't get me wrong, there are organizations that are running very functionally, functioning at a high level and doing well, but organizations in general are having a challenge with the competing demands of time, workplace balance, and of course, dollars and cents. So if you don't network within your group or with other people effectively, you'll find that there'll be an absence of trust between suppliers, vendors, customers, and of course your internal colleagues. If there's no trust, then of course we won't really be interested in engaging in conflict. Remember those stats I shared with you? People, 50% don't even trust their boss, and they're not going to say anything about it. If we don't network and build relationships, we're going to lack commitment, and nobody will be committed. People will not be held accountable, and lastly, of course, nobody will get the results they want. So a case in point is this, is that I even met the IEEE many years ago doing a workshop, and met Matthew and some of the other colleagues a while back. We got a chance to connect, understand the values, built a sense of trust. We're able to work through any difficulties, and now we're able to both prosper by having a relationship that is a win-win. So being able to network is integral to not just personal development, but also professional development. Now, the challenge is that you'll find that if there isn't organizational trust if organizational trust is low, you'll find that these things happen. People don't share information readily. People spin the truth to their advantage. There are numerous meetings after meetings because nobody spoke up in the meeting that they were in. Now, if you have high organizational trust, it's the exact opposite. New ideas are welcome. There's a high degree of accountability. There are few meetings after the meetings. So why we say that is that if we want to really be able to ensure that we can network with purpose, we've got to do a couple things. One, trust one another. Do things together. Build relationships inside and outside of the organization. Find different places and different ways to connect with people within your industry, or even within industries partly related to what you do. Make sure that you engage in unfiltered conflict around ideas, and make sure that you're open and honest. Make sure that we commit to decisions and plans of actions. Make sure that we're able to hold each other accountable, and ultimately those four will allow us to be able to focus on results that are collective. And so those are really some of the key aspects. So the first part we talked about was, why is it important? Well, it's important because we want to manage talent and talent for ourselves and our company. But to manage that talent, you have to build trust. You have to be able to connect. And where does that take us? Well, that takes us to this comment. The ability to establish a network, grow it, and build trust with all stakeholders, customers, suppliers, investors, and coworkers is the key leadership and team competency of this particular economy. If you're not doing it, you better get on it. And it can be as simple as going through your connections, whatever social media group you use, and reaching out to them. Now, that takes us to the last part. And the last part of this is the pipeline, right? And I'm talking to those that are within an organization, leading a group, or looking to develop themselves. The leadership pipeline is how do we get a chance to grow? And the only way we can grow is if we've got a strong network. Now, in the pipeline, you'll find that this is the usual process that a person will go through. They'll start as an individual contributor. They'll move up and they'll be able to run projects, be able to learn how to lead people. They'll become a little more operational, be able to juggle both. And then they'll be strategic in being able to say, here's where the organization needs to go. Now, the problem is that because networking isn't always promoted effectively in the organizations, you'll find that the pipeline often leaks. And you'll see that people that are pushed up the pipeline quickly tend to fall off. They haven't built a network around themselves. They haven't built connections within other departments, and they're just got their head down and doing their work, and a lot of them fall off, get disenfranchised, and would rather just not have to worry about it. So what can you do? You can make sure that you manage where the problems happen at any of the transitions where they're taking on a new set of skill sets or mindsets, or even, of course, perspectives. And realize that at these key points of the people, leader, operational, strategic, you really have to have a strong network around you within your organization and even without. You'll also find that we have to manage those transitions effectively. And here's the sad fact. In the work that I've done within organizations, doing assessments and so forth, I found that many leaders at different levels have had really big difficulty in managing that transition because they did not get the support. Ultimately, they did not have the network. So here's the problem. If we're going to be able to make this happen and make it work for ourselves, we've got to do a few things. We've got to first realize that there's a cost, right? We're going to have more turnover, low engagement, riskier external hires, and low ramp-up time. And that's not good for anybody in a place where we need to do things faster, better, and cheaper. And the bottom line is that inability to execute strategy will impact our opportunities. Remember we talked about opportunities earlier? That's the secret to networking. So where do we go from here? We've talked about a lot of stuff today, but hopefully I've given you some insight into how to really make networking work for you, power networking, right? The last part of it is I got to get back to the basics. And the basics today is social media and how do we use them, right? And so a couple of tips that I want to leave you with is that you got to build your network, right? Current network, and of course expand. And as I've said, in all different aspects, join professional associations like IEEE, online networks, study abroad, anywhere you can find an opportunity to meet with new people, do it. Now, keep in mind this though. Google, of course, being our master search engine for most of us around the world, has really impacted the way networking works. 40% of employers use such those networks to screen job candidates. 35% of employers did not even offer a job based on candidates' content uncovered on a social network. The targets: Facebook, LinkedIn, MySpace are the big ones. So what I'm saying here is be professional. Your network, it takes a lifetime to build a network, and it can take you one day or even an hour to lose it. So make sure you're careful, because not only are you using it, but the people that you're going to work with are using it. Be professional. Also keep in mind, you're going to want to avoid these things. I just thought I'd put them up as obvious, but again, sometimes the obvious is not obvious for all of us. Be careful what you post. Be careful where you're posting it. Make sure that you use it appropriately. And if you want to keep it, of course, private, then make sure that it's private and you're only inviting people that you want invited to you. So, lock down your Facebook account. Choose and accept your friends wisely, and be careful what you post. Does your online behavior presence say what you're really all about? So those are some quick tips, and those are ways to make sure that you network and make it work for you both online and offline. Connect with people, build it for yourself, make sure you have a strong network within your organization as well as outside of your organization. 70% of job vacancies are filled by recommendations. The wider your network, the more likely you'll find the right connections. Ladies and gentlemen, that is it, and hopefully I've given you some food for thought. Looked at a couple things in terms of networking. Make sure that you build a network as you grow as a leader, step one. Make sure as you build that network, you build trust, both inside and outside the organization. If you're moving up the pipeline of your organization or you're seeing somebody move up, make sure they have a network around them to support them. And lastly, make sure you careful what you put out there so that people are not getting the wrong impression of you. Because, of course, it only takes 3 seconds to make a first impression. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Corey Atkinson, Dimensions of Leadership. If you have any questions or concerns, feel free to check me out at my website, dimensionsleadership.com, or email me, corey@dimensionsofleadership.com. I would love to help you out, love to give you more insight, and hopefully get you ready to power network for 2015. Matthew, I don't know if there's any other questions you'd like to have for me, but I'd like to wrap up the show. Matthew, you can take it away.
Perfect. So did you have time for some quick questions, or did you? I have one if you wanted to entertain that.
I definitely have time for a question, Matthew. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. So you kind of mentioned briefly that about this competency-based model that in addition to trust, people must have active networkers. So are companies now using that to their advantage? For example, are they using a competency-based strategy along with a trust-based strategy to actually hire their employees?
I've seen it, Matthew, in a few places with organizations. They're trying to get the people in the door to be ready to perform quickly. You can imagine, in the HR world, the first, say, 4 to 5 months you're in an organization, you're learning a lot, right? Depending on the level you're at. So organizations realize that if we can get the right people in the right seats as fast as possible, then it'll be to their advantage. So they are trying to go a little bit more to see if you got the competencies. And I mean, that's what everybody tries to highlight in the resume. But they're doing other things to see if if there's a sense of balance and you are who you say you are by looking at not just what you have to offer, but do you have the competencies to fill the seat? So it is becoming a place where organizations are looking at, and I think all of us will see it becoming much more popular in the next decade.
That's a good point. So again, touching on trust. So you had that list of what happens if you have low organizational trust, but I think in my opinion, those factors actually dominate and are a hindrance for an individual or an organization to actually go beyond that. You know what I mean? So, fear of repercussions, for example, everyone's going to have that. So maybe are there any pointers on how you can actually get over that trust bump within an organization, and then, of course, to expand your network?
Matthew, that's a big question. People always say, Corey, what can you do to build trust? Where do we start? I have a couple of ideas. I'll go through them, and maybe you'll see one that works for you. Okay.
Okay.
The first thing is, when I tell people that you have to build trust, because we're so overloaded with the way we work in our lives, I'm finding that there's a sense of compartmentalization of what we do. We go to work, I got my work friends, I go home, I got my home friends. I'm not saying that everybody's got to be best buddies, but given the fact that once you get home, you're not just lounging, you're getting dinner ready, or you're hanging out with family, or you're going to some type of thing, I'm realizing that one of the best ways to build trust is to do things together in the workplace more often, and do things that are not always related to work. We're social beings as humans, and we need an ability to connect. And that's the problem with our technology and our smartphones. I mean, they have their place, but we're becoming disconnected, and that's impacting us. Road rage is going up, Matthew. Stress and mental health is becoming much more of an issue. We're getting inundated, and we're not being able to connect with people and really talk with them.
Mhm.
You can go to Starbucks; it'll be packed, and everybody's on their cell phones or on their laptops. So it's a challenge. So I tell people, if you want to build trust, try to do things together. And again, that takes courage. People will not always respond right away. The second is make sure that when stress does hit the organization on a project or a situation, the way you handle high pressure situations is a great way for you to build trust. An example of that is Tim Cook, the president and CEO of Apple, recently, and they were accused of doing some not too American actions in terms of sending money abroad. They were brought up to the Supreme Court, and Tim said, "We've made a mistake. What can we do to help fix it?" That little comment totally changed the way people looked at Apple. We kept them trusting them and seeing that they are fully integrity in terms of if they slip up, they're gonna own up. So do things together, and how you handle high pressure situations are two good ways to really build trust. I don't know if that's a good start, but definitely,
No,
if you have other questions, we could talk further
definitely.
about that offline.
Definitely, a good point is we actually have a question from Kate out of Switzerland. Interesting question here. Any specific strategies for young female executives? She's had the experience in which she was attempting to network, and it was perceived as not as she would hope. So I guess it was a bad networking experience. How do you handle yourself in a bad networking situation? So I guess it's a two-part question. Any specific
Yeah.
strategies for young female executives, and how would you handle yourself in a bad networking situation?
Well, that's a tough one for me, Kate. Obviously, I'm not young and I'm not female, but Kate, where would I start? My first thought, Kate, would be, excuse me, probably um, make sure that you know what you're trying to get out of building that network. So if you approached me, you'd say, "Hey, Corey, I just noticed you did this. I'd be interested in finding a little bit more about what brought this on." Like really be specific and targeted in what you're looking to build, so that the networking doesn't seem like anything else except you're interested in finding out more about that work. And you of course would have to say, because I'm looking for XYZ. So have a reason to connect with it. Have a reason that you can share why you'd be interested in finding out more about what that person has to offer. Um, Kate, I can only imagine there might be a few other tips that would work for you, and it depends on the situation. But I would recommend making sure that there's a clear reason why you want to build that connection with that person. And again, it might not be. You could say, "I'd love to just have you in my pool of people I could go to in the future, Corey." I'd be like, "Fine, no problem." So it could even be that generic, but at least it's direct. That you're not necessarily trying to make sure the messages are not being mixed. If the networking goes poorly, I often say, Matthew, Kate, it's own up to it and just come back and say, "Listen, I had a lot on my mind. I made a mistake, or I think I might have come off the wrong way. I'd love if we could start again." Of course, you got to pick and choose which battles you want to do that with, but I think honesty is the best policy, Kate. And if you come back and just say, "Listen, I made a mistake, or I think I misinterpreted something, or vice versa," and really open to that, I think most people would be willing to respond. Right? That goes back to the principle of reciprocity. If you give people a chance to show that you're human, they will more than willing return the factor that they're human as well. So for the first one, be clear in what you're looking for in terms of networking from a female point of view, and the second one, just own up and may say you made a mistake and start off with a whole new slate. Hopefully that helps her out, Matthew.
Yeah, excellent response. And I like the comment you just made about the theory of reciprocity and how everyone is just human. And if you just kind of just own up to everything, then everyone has the potential to actually network. Um,
You got it. The world is just a better place in general.
yeah, the world is just a better place. So I don't
Any
think
other questions?
there's no more other questions coming in, but we've had a great discussion. Corey, I'd actually like to thank you for all the 6-part series. It's been great, and then you will be missed. Hopefully, maybe in the future we can have maybe another non-traditional style webinar, but we'll see what the feedback we get from these series, and we'll be in touch. Thanks, Corey.
Matthew, thank you so much for having me. It was great working with you over the past year, and definitely now, if you need anything or anyone else has any questions or concerns, they can always reach me at corey@dimensionalleadership.com. And Matthew, thanks again for giving me the opportunity to work with your audience and your group. It's been a pleasure.
No problem. All right, guys. So thank
All
you
right.
for attending this webinar. We have a webinar actually next week, March 3rd, 10 a.m. Stacy He and Maricel Ramos are going to be talking to us about a personal finance webinar. So again, we're getting a little bit more practical with what we're going to be sending out in terms of material. It's going to be a multi-series webinar series, but we don't know exactly how many parts. But it will be part one will be next week, March 3rd, 10 a.m. Eastern. Please check out our career-based services mentor center, where we actually link you up with a mentee or a mentor in a specific field according to your interests or your career goals. And Resume Lab is actually a very interesting tool that we have for all IEEE Young Professional members, in which we can actually set you up with a mock interview actually on the spot through that tool. So, you know, two great career-based services for young professional members. If you have any suggestions for other young professional products services, please email us there. And again, thank you everyone for attending this webinar. I apologize for the delay, but it was a great webinar. Thank you again to Corey, and all the best.